This is Brett Riggins here with Real Estate Mogul MD. I'm sitting here on a couch in Split, Croatia with a close friend of mine, Mr. Thomas Guy. Thomas, how you doing today?
I'm doing well.
And from the other side of the world, from a time difference of, what is this, like 12
hours?
9 hours difference? Mr. Bob Bosic. Am I saying that correctly, Bob?
You are. A lot of people say basic or all sorts of different things and variations, but you've got it right, Bosic. And I am in Newport Beach, California, so yes, we're almost, a long ways away from each other.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
My kids always say, "Oh, dig a hole to China." It's like, oh, that's dig a hole to Newport Beach now. Awesome,
right.
Bob. Man, I really appreciate you joining on, and I may not express my gratitude enough, and though I do my best to express my gratitude, I always love being around you, man, and being able to bounce ideas off of you. Just a plethora of knowledge and experience, and the people on the podcast don't see this, but a plethora of beauty too.
Yes, the gray hairs, the old gray hair. Yes, thank you.
Right,
that's kind.
Well, Bob, man, I guess let's just start off with it. How did you get into real estate?
I have been involved with real estate in varying degrees for years. Probably 20 years ago, I was involved with a syndicate. I actually probably at about the age of 24, if I go all the way back, I think I was 24 and I bought my first home, and for a rental property for income purposes. And then from there, I've owned multiple homes across the country. And been involved with syndicates, et cetera. And then as an executive, I managed, and under my portfolio, I had 100 commercial properties across Canada and the United States that was also part of the business that I was responsible for. So, I've had a lot of exposure to both commercial and residential real estate in varying degrees, both as a owner, involved with syndicates, or as part of a portfolio of a pretty good sized company.
So at one point, I know that you went from the West Coast to the East Coast, kind of down there in the Panhandle, Florida area. I think Gulf side in Florida, right? You did some real estate down there as well, too, right?
Absolutely. That was the latest and greatest endeavor. I took what I thought were my previous experiences that I just described, and I headed to Florida. I was retiring as an executive, and I thought, this can't be too difficult to get off the ground and get going. As I described, I had over 100 pieces of property that I was managing just previously. So I thought, I'll go just buy and sell some properties in retirement, keep myself busy, make some extra cash, and just be engaged, I guess is the way I would describe it. And off I went to Florida. That was probably about 8 years ago. I went off on that endeavor, bought properties across the state, from Jacksonville all the way down into Tampa and St. Petersburg and everywhere else. Yeah.
Awesome. I didn't say here at the beginning of the episode here, but Real Estate Mogul MD is directly to provide knowledge and value to physicians specifically around the real estate world. And, thinking about this now, Bob, there's so many pieces that I know that you could share to physicians, and that you speak with a lot of physicians currently as well. So what is one of the most important things that you could share just right out of the gate to physicians who are either interested in starting investing in real estate, or physicians who are already investing in real estate?
Well, I could just share with you my experience, and every time I speak to others who have had similar ideas or thoughts about doing what I did, or even more actively being involved, I do it fairly seamlessly, and I was stunned how ill prepared I was, and how much opportunity I didn't take advantage of, and or how much lost opportunity happened for me out of the gates. There was just a lot of time. It's a lot of energy. There were a lot of unknowns. It seems pretty straightforward. But the biggest thing is if you don't have relationships, long, well-established relationships and contacts, that are learned over time, and trust that is developed, and go through that process, it can be a very painful experience.
Relationships and contacts. That's great. Bob, we just recorded a episode about leveraging relationships, and that was really the step number one, was putting equity in those relationships and building that out, and that can make the difference.
You can't overemphasize that. If you go into any particular market and it's a crapshoot, until you can establish the relationships and either get fortunate right out of the gate or learn through trial and error who are the right people to be around, who are the ones that you can count on, that you value, and that you want to continue to work with. And that oftentimes could be a long, laborious experience. And it was for me in Florida, quite candidly.
One way that we've shortened that curve is masterminds. I think getting ourselves around other like-minded people has been a just crucial stepping stone in expediting that long and laborious process you're talking about. Bob?
Yeah. Pardon me?
No, I think Thomas was going to say something.
I was just going to agree with that, and I can relate, not necessarily to real estate, but just traveling around to all these different cities. Is every time I land at the airport, I realize that I know absolutely nobody and have no relationships. So I have to start from ground zero.
So for everybody that doesn't know, Thomas is living the nomadic. I've heard this here recently. Nomadic lifestyle, and he's like we said, we're in Croatia, split Croatia right now. And I mean, he's been to Colombia, South America, Poland, Germany, off to Turkey for Thanksgiving next week.
Yeah.
That's fun. Yeah. So the nomadic lifestyle. And you had just mentioned that earlier today, where it's like when you move, it's like you reset, you don't know. And Bob, you know this too, like when being part of the virtual acquisition company, when we're in markets that we don't know, it could be, difficult because you don't have boots on the ground. You don't have that direct connection with somebody that has that solid ability to say, no, don't buy on that street, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, it's just everything is not necessarily black and white. Life is about shades of gray, as I say, and finding that. And that's true in real estate also. You could be in the most fabulous neighborhood, and if you're not familiar, or you think you're in the most fabulous neighborhood in a given city, but if you're not from there and you're dealing with this in a virtual way, you just don't understand the nuances of cities, of neighborhoods, of proximity to important things. It would be a no-brainer, a duh kind of experience if you were from there. I've been through that experience in a virtual world, purchasing real estate all over the country. And there's just, on paper, black and white makes sense, but there's just so much nuance. And having people on the ground and in the area is just imperative to make the right decision.
So in this house that we purchased just recently, personally for us, it's a joy. So we fly in one weekend we moved across the United States. We fly in one weekend. We're looking at a couple of houses, and I'm gonna pull the trigger. I'm gonna pull the trigger. I'm gonna get the job done. And we go, Bob. We come into this neighborhood, and it looks amazing. It's like, the big centerpiece, the divided road. And we go back through, I'm looking at these houses. I'm looking at the price point that we're purchasing, and I'm looking at these houses around me. I'm like, what is going on here? This doesn't align. These houses are worth way more than what I could afford. And we turn this last little corner, right? And there's the house. We end up purchasing it. It's a great neighborhood. Don't get me wrong. But when we came in with the real estate agent, we came in through one way. And
Right.
even with boots on the ground, it still doesn't give you the feel of the neighborhood itself. I'm very happy with where we're at, Bob, but it's just that story of if you turn and go the other way to get back out, now we're descending in property value, right? Just to go down a different direction on the same roads.
You're absolutely correct. Where I'm talking to you from in Newport, I'm on a place called Balboa Island. It's a strip. It's a beautiful area of the country, a beautiful location in Southern California. It's probably about, I'm going to guess, about a 6-mile strip of road till it dead ends at a place called the Wedge, which is the entrance of the bay into Newport Beach. But just in the 6-mile stretch, right? You look on the 6-mile stretch, and the homes are beautiful. There's the bay on one side, there's sand on the other side. You can decide which side you want to live on. But if you're not from here, you don't know. There are huge differences. Although the properties look all the same between mile 1 and mile 6, there are big differences in locations that if you didn't know within there that you don't want to be. So, there's a couple of piers by way of example, and that's where spring breakers go. So, you have to decide which end of the island you want to be on, what part of that you want to be on the beach side or the bay side. And there's these anomalies that take place that you could absolutely make a mistake and regret, even though everything looks similar. It is not similar, right?
Hey, Bob, back to that, the idea of your journey with the real estate aspect, I guess specifically in Florida, journeying out as the retired executive, looking for that engagement for yourself. What was one thing that you would tell physicians, maybe in a similar perspective, where they may be retiring and want to lock into some real estate? What would be one thing that you would tell them that, like, you don't do this?
Oh, geez, I don't even know where to begin with that. I would tell you that you don't want to have a scattered shot approach to things. I thought, I'm very much aware of economies of scale and doing things efficiently and maximizing my resources within a particular geography, and I knew that as an executive, and I certainly didn't apply that. I was living in Tampa, purchased a property in Jacksonville, which was probably a 2-hour drive away. Another one over in the Miami area, St. Petersburg, etc. And the point is that I was not being efficient with the use of time and space. And not only was I now, when I established who the right person was or figured out who the wrong person was in Jacksonville, through trial and error, I had to replicate that process in each of these other areas that I went through. And there was just, I found myself trying to find, once I had the guy at Jacksonville, would he be interested in working on the properties for me down in Tampa, even though he lives in Jacksonville? He just found that that was just a huge error, in a costly one. It was poor decision making. So those are some of the bad things. I can tell you one of the good things that I lucked into, because I talked to you about initially, you either through trial and error, hit and miss opportunities, or sometimes things fall into place for you. One of the things that did fall into place for me was when I went to start to, early on, I structured, my LLC and got all of that established, and went to a local person that I had vetted to do my taxes and to set up, everything that was required. I wanted, all my AP account payable and all of that stuff being done, my QuickBooks handled. I wanted somebody doing that for me, and I wanted a pretty sophisticated person. And at the end of that discussion, that person said, listen, I know if you're interested, I'd be happy to, as part of my service to you, to take a look at your previous year's taxes. I might be able to see if there's some opportunity there. I initially said no, I wasn't really interested in it, and I didn't want to go through the work. But at the end of the day, I said, well, what could it hurt? Again, I'm in the Southern California area, and I've found either through LA or here in Orange County that, there's some pretty sophisticated folks that were available. And I thought I had probably the best of the best, and maybe they are. But suffice to say, when I had this review of my taxes, I had the good thing that happened for me is I found out that there was opportunities that I had left on the table, and fortunately enough, I was able to go and recapture those for prior years. And then he was able to help structure the business for me in a way that made a lot more sense and helped me capitalize on stuff that I otherwise would not have been doing. Now, I'm an operations guy. I'm not a CPA, and I'm not, a tax guy. So, everybody needs to stay in their lane, and those areas are clearly not my lane. I lean heavily on people for those types of skill sets.
Yeah. I think, Thomas, you and I were just talking about that earlier today, I think, of leaning on other people for the knowledge. I have a little bit of this, but I know, like the thing we talked about earlier, I know the questions that I need to ask. And it sounds like Bob had those questions, but leaning on the circle.
Yeah, Thomas, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're absolutely correct. I knew the right questions to ask, and sometimes I know just enough to get myself into trouble, and I'm old enough and wise enough now to stay out of that lane anymore, and just ask the right questions and allow the people who are the experts to do their thing. But yeah, I would say my biggest mistakes were trying to go in too many different neighborhoods, didn't maximize my economies of scale. I didn't select one area, establish relationships, and get entrenched, know inside and out all the nuances of where I was. And I just, I oversimplified it. And by oversimplifying my thinking about it from the get-go, I made it infinitely more difficult than it needed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bob, who would you suggest to physicians if they were looking to build their team to do? Here's a better question. Your exit strategy for those properties in St. Petersburg, Jacksonville, and Miami, what was your exit strategy for those?
They were different. Each one was situational. Each one provided a different opportunity. Some of them were flips, and some of them were buy and hold and rent for some, just to manage. There was another thing. I didn't have the proper property management team. I didn't. Right. I found I was everything. I was wearing every single hat, right, from construction management.
Bob, you were fully engaged, weren't you?
I was more than fully engaged, and it was becoming something more than I had desired it to be. So, yes, yeah.
Who would be the first person that you would suggest when it comes to building a team to do this, whether it was the active fix and flip or the passive buy and hold? Who would be the first person that you would go out and build that relationship with if you were to do this again in one market?
If I was starting from scratch, and I was going into one market and I didn't have my LLC and my tax guy and all of that structured and ready to go, I would start there. That would be step one. I need to find the right person that I am going to engage with that is going to help manage the business. And I mean, from a tax perspective, from account payables to collection of monies, all of that kind of stuff, and making sure that I've structured and I'm thinking about what it is I'm doing and moving forward. I have to have a really good, well thought out plan, much better than what I originally did. Boy, with the benefit of time and experience, if I could go back, the time and pain I would save myself. But I would start there. I'd probably start with my, how do I structure this business, create my LLC, and who is going to be the person that is going to be helping me manage some of the receipts, if you will, and, outflow and incoming revenues that are going to come. That would be where I would start First of all, if I had this concept in my mind and I was going to go into an area, I would start there. I kind of see that as the starting point.
Well, yeah,
right. And then from there, then I got to start making contacts. I've got to start making, depending on my strategy, if it's a buy and hold or a flip, then it becomes, who are the people that are going to help me find these properties? How can I become aware of them earlier in the stage so that I can try to find some off-market stuff as opposed to everything that's posted on Zillow, because there's no real opportunity there oftentimes to create any equity or to get stuff off-market that's below ARV or whatever market value says it is. So to get stuff under market value. Those would be some of the first steps that I would be taking. And then from there, I've got to find the right construction person to help me do the construction management, the right contractor, the right general, whether or not they've got, independence. There's just so much involved in it all. But it is all about relationships, and each of these take time to find the right people, right? It's trial and error. Oftentimes, if you don't have a contact and relationship with somebody in the area, within the business that can direct you, it's tough. It's difficult. And those would be some of the first steps I would take. I don't know. What are your thoughts? What would you do?
That's a great question. When I'm launching into new markets, I am reverse engineering the what. So what am I going after? And then I'm looking at maybe who's doing it, how are they doing it, and then who can help me do it, kind of thing. So whether, we talked about either that means if I'm going in for buy and hold, my first call out of the door is going to be typically like a property manager, and even the real estate agent as well too. And we had spoken of this investor friendly experience, maybe invest themselves. Those two sides of the deal are really going to help us. And then it's all about having the right questions, asking the right questions to the right people. Hey, who do you know that I should know? Who are the wholesalers, or how do I get these off-market deals, that kind of stuff. But it's that same direction, Bob, that you're talking about. You hit it up front with the logistical side with the LLC structure first, because yes, you can create chaos when you go into, but it's your velocity though too, Bob. Because it sounds like you went in fully engaged, like more than one at a time. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, I was fully engaged. And the stories I could tell you, boy, there's some. In fact, I've told you one where I bought a house and I didn't even realize that there was a pool in there, and then ultimately I had to end up just filling in the pool and selling. It was one of the first properties I ever bought. And again, I tell these stories to people. I'm not embarrassed by it. It's just what happens when you don't have the relationships, the experience. And I was doing that virtual. I was still in California when I purchased the first property in Florida. And man, yeah, wow.
Pools. I filled a couple pools in, Bob. I filled the pool in. I was required to unfill it. I had to dig it back out, and then I had to fill it back in again.
Yep. Yeah. You got to make sure you get all of that. They throw in concrete blocks.
This municipality would not allow the concrete to be broken up and left in the hole.
Yep. Been there.
Yeah, so that's at that point. It's like, okay, I'm digging out now, so I just put another pool in here. It's like
exactly. Exactly.
But we've had success with pools before, but that's market driven. Market driven. And the pool that we have currently in our personal house, we could see there were liner issues when we acquired the property. And that's going to be $8,000 to fix that. So if you're not prepared for that,
exactly.
A good rule of thumb is just to avoid properties that have pools.
Unless you're buy and hold for sure.
Unless you're going to live there yourself, because it's almost seemingly going to run into some problems at some point if it has a pool.
I absolutely agree. I'll tell you obviously in Florida, that's they're a high commodity, but even so, you know, if you're not living in it and you can avoid the pool as one other variable that you have to manage as you're trying to disposition a property that you want to purchase, it's just better to do without it. There's just a lot of variables that are involved,
Market,
and more you can
price
reduce them.
point, and purpose. I mean,
Yes.
those three things are going to drive that, because at that point, you know, that for buy and hold, absolutely not. You know, because we're talking, you got to think when you put something in contract or purchase or in your portfolio, it's not for me, right? This is for
Correct.
the lender. This is for the lender to get excited about. This is for the insurance person to get excited about. And this is for the property manager to get excited about. I get excited about that direct deposit showing up in my account. That excites me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's where we get excited. And when you think about it, if you're going to buy and hold and use it for passive income, you know, you don't want high vacancy rates. You don't want lots of things and variables that can break high priced things on your property that are going to fall apart on you, and you're just adding one that, you know, needs to be maintained. The water's got to be maintained, the balances of everything, the motors, etc.
Should bring Erin. Erin, my wife, is officially a certified pool engineer.
She's figured it out. She's got the balances all down.
Remember, I said that pool liner had needed to be replaced, so there was leaking. So when you have a leaking pool, now you have to add water in it. And if anybody has a chemistry background, you're adding another variable, right? So you're always trying to keep up with it. But she's done absolutely great.
Or you end up in a green pool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It went green one time. Holy cow. What I was going to say something else about buy and holds.
Well, I know that since we're talking about pools and water here, one of the first relationships that I built on my real estate journey is actually an investor in Michigan, and he has, I think, around 50 to 100 single-family rentals. And I was just asking them a bunch of basic questions, not knowing anything about real estate. And the one thing that I remember him telling me is water is the house's enemy. You don't want water, whether that's a pool or that's water near your house. You just don't want water. With gutter, you want to make sure that it has gutters. So just thinking of that as we were having this conversation. And also hedge funds, they will not buy anything that has a pool. Right. They're one of the biggest property acquisition companies.
So in the acquisition world that we live in as well, too, specifically for buy and holds, we're going to follow right along with the hedge funds. There's a reason why. Again, I say this all the time, success leaves clues, right? There's a reason why that's in there. And it's, again, setting up a scenario that makes your lender happy, makes your insurance company happy, makes your property manager happy. All three of those things don't have anything to do with the pool. What I was saying about the buy and hold scenarios, again, it's not for me. I don't care, right, that it makes me happy or makes me smile. The house itself doesn't necessarily have to be pretty. The thing we focus on in the buy and hold world is it needs to be nice, neat, clean, and mechanically sound. That is what you provide a good home opportunity for, right? Nice, neat, clean, and mechanically sound.
Yeah, I tell people that, you know, you have to change the mindset that most people are often in before they make their first real estate investment purchase that isn't their primary residence. And that is, we're often driven emotionally when we buy our own home, and it's the emotion of purchasing the home is usually something that is driven by the aesthetic appeal of the property. So the wife or you walk into the house, or the kids, and go, oh my goodness, look at this yard, or look how big this room is, or I love the kitchen, I love this. And it starts to elicit these emotions, and it starts to drive your behavior when you're going to buy your own home, and you're thinking about spending 20 years there. The opposite of that is true when you're making an investment. There's no emotion that should be involved in this. The only emotion that you should derive from your investment is the joy it brings you by not causing you problems, and the fact that it's generating income, wealth, or is going down the path that you've created undisturbed. And that brings me joy when that happens.
Joy and happiness, just that
Absolutely.
Positive. Yeah. And not falling in love with the house. And you've heard me say this before, Bob. It's a math equation. It's not about emotions.
It totally is. It's a great way that you have framed it. It is math. And what makes a smile on my face is when I can get it undervalued. What brings a smile to my face is when I can get it cleanly, and it doesn't create problems for me. And everything works as planned. That is what brings a smile and an emotional response for me on investment properties, for sure.
Absolutely. Bob, I have one more question for you. And then it relates to maybe the time that we've spent together here the last year or so. You've been an opportunity to drop an offer or two. Would you say that that's a fair comment?
I would say that is a fair comment. I would say, hundreds probably. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So making offers, and I would say 90, even 95% of those offers are direct to seller. If a physician is interested in or has the opportunity to speak directly with the seller, what would be some advice that you would give them on framing their offer?
Wow. Well, I think before they frame their offer, they have to understand what's driving the seller to sell. What is the situation that the seller finds themselves, and what is their motivation for selling? And that influences where I would be entering in with an offer. I'm not quite sure exactly what your question you're thinking about, but I think understanding, really sitting down and understanding the motivation of the seller before you even start going to stage 2 of putting together an offer is to understand what their motivation is for selling, because that will heavily influence how you structure your offer and where you enter in at the offer, if it's something that you want to do, and how motivated they are to sell their property.
That is an awesome answer, Bob, by the way. It's exactly where the question was heading to, was like, what does it take to get there? Because you had just mentioned less than a couple minutes ago about, in investing, it's not an emotional decision, but that's what most people are accustomed to doing, especially with their own home. And what you just touched on in this answer is that's step 1, is finding out what the emotion is for the seller. What's the situation, not the condition of the house? What's the situation? Where's that at? And then Bob, helping them to that point of, okay, you need to sell your house. You need to sell it because of X, Y, and Z. And what I want to do is take them to where they want to be, right? I want to show them, hey, you can be done with this, and you can be over here and have this problem solved for this, right? This is the offer. This is what I'm able to pay. This is my math equation. This is what I'm able to pay, but it gives you what you need.
Yes. And then I would tell physicians, going back to the emotional versus mathematical component of making decisions for investments versus personal properties. I personally have found properties for my own home to live in. I have found myself on a number of occasions, experiencing fear of missing out. You're right. You're afraid that you're going to miss out on the opportunity, and there's someone's chirping in your ear and telling you there's another offer that's coming forward, and this and that. And, it impacts what your entry point is. And again, no emotion involved. Understand what they want. And making this a math exercise, strictly a math exercise, making sure the numbers pencil out. And if the people aren't motivated enough to go down that path, we'll move on and find that someone that is. But I'm not going to get sucked into that dynamic.
Right.
And I'm not deviating from what the plan is.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a book I read, To Sell is Human, and in a piece of that, it was explaining how things have changed with our access to knowledge and information. And the more knowledge and information that you have, the more that you can make a logistical decision rather than an emotional decision.
Yes.
So back in the day, Bob, when you walked down a car lot, it was like Wild West, right? Because that car salesman, he held all the cookies, buddy. He had all the information. You didn't have Google. You didn't have Carfax. You didn't have any of that stuff. He had the cookies. And that puts you in a place where you just didn't know. It was a crapshoot. But now, the way that car sales are, I mean, Carvana, come on. The first time I saw a car in a dispensary machine, I was like, what in the world? It's like you can haggle a little bit anymore, but it's just not there because the information is now at the buyer's hands, right?
Correct.
And as you're making these offers now as an investor, you have the information likely the seller doesn't have. The more that you can prepare yourself with that emotion, whether it's emotional intelligence or market intelligence, is going to put you in a better spot.
Absolutely. And you also have to remember that this is the seller's personal property. You're buying as an investment. Like I said, when we buy stuff for ourselves to live in, it becomes personal. And oftentimes it's an emotional sell for them. You know, they have unreasonable expectations. They're 2 weeks away from having zero because they're going into foreclosure and they're going to lose their home. And it's going to be on the doorsteps of the county, or the sheriff's office to auction off a property or something. And you find people just going, well, my home is worth X. And you're saying to them, I understand that, but I got a scenario here where we can take care of this, put some money into your pocket, help you move on to the next stage of your life. Yeah, but I want so much more from my property. You're like 2 weeks away from having nothing. What are you talking about, right? And dealing with those people's emotions are a joy sometimes, I guess, is what I would say.
It doesn't even stop there either, Bob. Like even through the other end of the deal too, it's like, okay, we acquire the property. They're so emotionally attached that we've had issues or challenges with homeowners. Are you laughing right now? I think
I am laughing.
We have challenges with homeowners. They are so emotionally attached to the property, they just can't let it go. That was my daughter's room. That she put that border up. She did this, and you did that, and it's like at that point, I still have to take them back and make sure that we did everything that we said we were going to do.
You're right. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I recently had that experience where the person went through to figure out what they wanted to do. They wanted to move from one part of the country out to New York or New Jersey because their first grandchild was being born. They were heck to be driven to get there, wanted to do it quickly. I explained to them, they explained to me the condition of the property. I made an offer for them. They considered it, spoke about it, prayed on it, thought about it, and got back to me a couple of weeks or a couple of days later and said, yeah, buy the house, sell the house. And 3 months later, hear from them because they're so emotionally invested in this home they no longer own and they wanted to get rid of and relocate that, they're looking it up on Zillow and calling to ask questions about it. They're just invested in it. It's interesting.
That emotional piece weighs really, really heavy for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. It's just in these midst of these conversations, it's always like, there's so many pieces of the experiences that jump up in my mind, and like while we're talking, I'm like, well, it was this one, and then this one, and then this one.
I think that's the point, right? To this, to on the phone with you to do your original question is, what was your experience and what are going on? I could sit here and talk to you for 8 hours today. Take a break, get on the phone and talk to you and share stories with you for 8 hours tomorrow and probably the balance of the week. Just all of the experiences that you have at every stage of the process of buying, of locating, of generating, of holding, of selling. Each one of those phases is a journey unto itself, and there's good stories and bad stories and funny stories amongst them all. But the bottom line is it takes time. It takes sweat equity. If, a physician wants to do this on their own, not just a physician, anybody, an executive like myself, an attorney, I don't care who it is. If you've got sweat equity and time, and you're willing to, experience growing pains, you could do that. I don't think that's necessary if you can tap into the right people. I'm always looking to try to tap into the right people and forego that, despite some of the experiences I've shared with you and some of the stupid mistakes I made. But I think we would all agree, getting tapped into the right person in the right situation, it goes a long way to eliminating some of the funny, silly stories I could spend hours telling you about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just saying to Thomas earlier today, like I'm watching our rehab process now, right? I'm watching the updates come in on Slack channel, and it's just like, I was telling Thomas, I'm like, do you have any idea how good it feels for rehabs to be done, and I don't have to do anything? Like I'm not, Bob, like I grew up on the job site. That's where I live. I've slept on piles of carpet on rehabs that had to get done. It's just the stories and the hours they've put into these things. And now I just watch them come in on Slack. Like, that feels pretty good.
It does.
Now I'm engaged.
You tell the story about digging a hole and filling a hole and doing all of that stuff. Well, I did that with on the same house where I had to fill in the pool. I also laid down a new floating floor that was done in not properly, because I had the wrong person doing it, who I thought was going to give me a good deal, and boy, did they give me a good deal. And you have to fire the person. You got to tear up a bunch of the work. You got to start over. You got to buy more material. You got to get it put down properly. These are all those painful experiences, and I'm just one guy with, a million stories amongst a million guys that also have a million stories that have been doing this for a long time.
I had one of those good deals one time too. The deal's so good you had to get it again because you had to redo it, right?
Exactly.
It was a tile shower, and the tiles started sagging. Like, they laid them, and then you look across the line, it was drooping. I'm like, that's not right, guys. What's going on? And it was so bad. And there were, I think, one or two other things that contractor was doing in the house. We, had moved on. We went our separate ways. I went in there to demo this shower. I grabbed the top and literally like pulling a piece of wallpaper that hadn't been glued yet off the wall. This tile.
They just started coming off in a strip.
This had been setting for 3 days, and it was still wet. Buddy, you got the wrong thin set in there, guy.
Right? Yeah.
I was thinking the story that jumped out of my head earlier, and I was talking about, framing your offer, and we had talked a little bit about bartering almost. We were getting into that direction. And we're here in Croatia, and I always love getting the kids something. I've got an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I found this thing I wanted to get. So I go up to this little market on the street, and I go up there, I'm talking, and I buy it, and Thomas finds something that he wants to buy for his mother, and he starts bartering, and I'm like, oh man, it blew my mind. That's the funnest thing about traveling on these little markets, is like bartering. And
right.
It's like when you're framing that offer, you're going to go into it with the idea, there are times when you drop that offer and you get it, right? But a lot of the times it's got to be painful for both sides. And that's really what a negotiation is. There's going to be give and take on both sides. And again, preparing yourself with that knowledge and going into it, the emotional knowledge, and financial knowledge, market knowledge of understanding that and going into it. But I totally lost the opportunity here in Croatia and not bartered. 15 kunas.
I got 10 kuna off my gift for my mother.
But that brings up the idea too. In real estate, it's a number, right? And if there's a number on something, don't hesitate. Don't ever put emotion into your number when you offer. If their number is too high, it makes no difference what your number is. You've got to go in the number that works for you. There's no emotion in that.
Yeah, again, this is bartering, and everybody's got experience of buying and selling. But I've had people tell me they want $275,000 for a property, and I've told them, well, that's not going to work for me. And a $275,000 opening ask, turns into a $125,000 purchase or $130,000 purchase. And it's just that journey of I know what you would like to have, what you want to have, but understanding, as we said from the very beginning, what is their motivation for selling? What are their circumstances? And what is going to reasonably get accomplished? And what am I willing to, in this circumstance, willing to pay or buy a piece of property for? And you sometimes you think that you're just so far away, but you never know. And that's why it's important from the get-go to understand what's going on with the person who's selling it.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of like wrapping that up is everything's negotiable too.
Yep. And that's the point, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, I think that we've had a great conversation here on the old Real Estate Mogul MD.
Yes, it's been good. I appreciate it.
Yeah, the thing I kind of want to wrap everything up with here is right out of the gate, you stressed, going into a new market is building relationships and contacts and leaning on them to kind of help. The bad thing that you can do is not have focus in that approach. So making sure that you are focused in simplifying, but not oversimplifying your approach to say, okay, this is the market I'm going to be in. That way I only have to build one network right now. Then you can.
When I say, and when you say market, I mean, I'm oftentimes, I'm being so much more specific. One of my learnings was not only do I want to not be in Jacksonville and Tampa and Miami all at the same time, I want to be in Tampa exclusively, and then I want to be in a specific section of Tampa exclusively, and I want to, almost narrow it down to very precise neighborhoods for specific reasons because I know the area so well, and I understand, as we were talking about earlier, the nuances of the location and the opportunity that it presents, especially on a buy and hold. Where is it relative to work and commute, and is it seamless and easy? Can people use public transportation? Are there ancillary services around the neighborhood? Is it a safe neighborhood? All of those things. I mean, you start to get very much narrowed down. And the point to this is, going all the way back also, is that if you can't dedicate yourself to do this in a serious way, both getting on the ground, looking, and or otherwise investing your time, it's not something you're going to get done probably.
Right. Or it may get done, but you may find yourself in a situation where it shouldn't have gotten done.
It's not going to get done right or correctly.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of touches in on the trial and error required piece, though, too. You mentioned trial and error, and if you have the ability to put the sweat equity of the time into it, then you'll be able to work it out through trial and error.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. That's what I did. But boy, that's a lot of broken china along the way. That's unnecessary. Yeah. Boy, if I could do over. We all say that. If we could only do it over, knowing what we know.
And the other thing we talked about is maybe even just entry level framing offers and understanding the seller's motivation. The emotion behind it. And that's how I'm then going to frame my offer, present it in that manner as well, too. And kind of wrapping everything up, just saying everything's negotiable.
Yep. Everything's negotiable. And it's a numbers game. You got to make a lot of offers.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, that is a true statement. You have to be prepared to make your offer based upon the numbers that pencil out for you long term, factoring in everything that is going to be needed to be considered. And when it pencils out, you make your offer. If they say no, they say no. and you thank them and let them know that you're available for them later on if they want to come back and revisit that discussion. And on you go to the next one and the next one and the next one.
Yep. It's leading into a whole other conversation about mindset and preparing yourself, saying that there is value on the other end of it. This book, To Sell is Human, is fascinating because it just made me think of another part in there about Bob the Builder. Have you ever heard that cartoon, Bob?
I have.
Bob the Builder. It says, "Can we do it?"
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
The way that you talk to yourself in that manner, though, that like where you question yourself instead of straight positive talk, you're actually pushing your mind to work harder to prove that yes, you can because of this, and then I get this. So can we do it? Yes, we can.
Absolutely.
I love it. Well, hey, Bob, as always, man, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your experience and you sharing your experience, because there's knowledge to gain from it. And when we do share this knowledge and experience, it limits the trial and error required and even the sweat and equity required to do this when we're sharing in a mastermind perspective like this.
Yeah, I always enjoy talking with you as well. It's a safe environment. You don't feel like you're being judged when you share the stories that I've shared. We all, it's just a good environment. You're incredibly knowledgeable, and you're really good at. I've learned a lot from you. You've taught me a lot, and I think anybody else would be well suited to sit down and spend some time with you and to learn and to be involved, because I know I have.
Well, that's awesome, man. I appreciate that. And Tommy G.
Yep, that's all I got to say. Appreciate you coming on, Bob.
You're very welcome, guys.
Stories with us here across the globe.
Best of luck with everything, and I appreciate it. Nice talking to you in Croatia from here in Southern California.
Thank
you very much.
Real Estate Mogul MD signing off. See everybody later.
All right, guys. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.